So now that we kind of have a smooth layer of what phase one is all about, we can slowly progress into phase two, or the frame and the walls of your house.
Hello and welcome to the Core Podcast. We're your hosts, Aline Keller
and Shannon Polson.
I'm a precision nutrition certified coach.
And I'm a NASM certified personal trainer for over 13 years. We support women 30 years old and over to pursue health through realistic nutrition and fitness strategies. Our main passion is to help you find that smile when you look in the mirror, find freedom when you eat, and joy when moving your body.
Make sure to subscribe for your weekly dose of doable health tips, practical advice, and so much more. It's the health education you wish you'd had. So today we are continuing our phases of exercise series, and we are talking about phase two, which is strength endurance training. And Shannon's going to tell us the ins and outs of it. If you haven't heard the other episodes, we have an introduction, which is an overview. There's the phase one, which is stabilization, that you really need to listen to because that's an important phase for us all to circle back to every once in a while. And today we're working on phase two, strength endurance training.
Yes, thank you. Today we are progressing along at a safe and exciting pace, moving into phase two, which is what you'll transition to after you've completed phase one. So transitioning into new phases is certainly something to celebrate. It's proof that you're working hard and you're remaining consistent towards your fitness journey. So never hesitate to celebrate the small or the big wins when it comes to your body and the movement that you're capable of performing. So let's go ahead first and recap phase one, which was stabilization endurance training. And this phase one, was an absolute must stage of training that everyone from the beginner to the elite athlete must visit. This phase focuses on appropriate body alignment and the stabilization strength necessary to maintain that body alignment. It increases the strength of your tendons, your ligaments, your joints, your cartilage, your bone mass, muscles, your mind, and other human movement systems to create and build a powerful, efficient working you. Basically, this phase is building a solid foundation that will allow you to be strong from your feet all the way up to your neck, to feel less pain and to move more efficiently. So think of phase one as you would building a house. Phase one is laying down the foundation, because you wouldn't begin building a house with the roof or the appliances, and the same goes with your fitness journey. So now that we kind of have a smooth layer of what phase one is all about, we can slowly progress into phase two, or the frame and the walls of your house. So after training in phase one for 6 to 8 weeks, you'll move into phase two, strength endurance training. The goal in this specific phase is to enhance stabilization endurance while increasing prime mover strength. Now, we dealt with a lot of stabilization in phase one. We completed exercise that would focus on total body stabilization while developing optimal neuromuscular efficiency, or coordination. An example of this dynamic could be an elevated palm plank into a floor plank, then a stability ball plank. So phase one is where you're kind of, again, just starting from the ground up. If you've never done a palm plank before, you might start in an elevated position, such as on a chair, a bench, or even on the wall. And then you'd slowly progress into your floor plank, where your hands are flat on the floor. And then once you're capable of doing that and your form is proper, you could move then to a stability ball plank. So again, just focusing in on all of that stabilization and that coordination. So then moving into phase 2, we're pairing those stability focused exercises with exercises that increase your prime mover strength. So we're just progressing everything that we worked so hard for in phase 1, and just we're going to keep building up from there. So prime movers are the muscles that act as the initial and main source of motive power. So these two adaptations, stabilization and prime mover strength, are accomplished by performing 2 exercises in which is called a superset back to back. So again, in phase 2, we're focusing in on 2 variables, stabilization and prime mover strength. So a superset, you're taking 1 stabilization exercise and then 1 prime mover strength exercise, and we're pairing them together, a superset. A superset of these 2 exercises that are performed back to back without any rest time between. So you're literally moving from one exercise to the other, no rest in between. And that's kind of where the like the endurance portion of it comes, your muscle endurance. Recovery, I say to my clients, if you really need to recover at any point in time, please do, because it's your body telling you to slow down. You don't want to get lightheaded, dizzy, that type of thing. But by dismissing that recovery or that rest in between 2 exercises, you're working on that muscle endurance. So the 2 exercises performed in a superset will have similar joint dynamics. So let's say the first exercise that you perform is a traditional strength exercise in a stable environment, and we'll call that the bench press. Whereas the second exercise is a stabilization exercise performed in a less stable yet controlled environment, and this will be a stability ball push-up. So as you can see, we're working on the upper body, that chest, because we have a bench press followed immediately is your push-up. The principle behind this method is to work the prime mover in the first exercise, which is your bench press, to elicit prime mover strength. Then immediately following with an exercise that challenges the stabilization muscles, which would be your stability ball push-up. So if you think of a stability ball, it's that big ball, that 55, 65 centimeter ball that's blown up, and you're trying to perform a push-up on one of those bad mama jammas. That's a lot of core engagement, a lot of stabilization. I bet if you hadn't gone to phase 1 first, you would not have that stabilization, that strength to even think about performing a stability ball push-up. So that's just another good example of why phase 1 is so important. Another example for phase 2 with a superset would be a floor glute bridge, which would be your stable exercise. Then immediately afterwards, performing a basu ball squat, a less stable exercise, which again, there is no rest in between the glute bridge and the basu ball squat. This type of training produces an increased ability to maintain postural stabilization and dynamic joint stabilization. And you'll hear as we progress into phase 3, 4, and 5, if you don't have that dynamic joint stabilization progressing out of phase 2, you're screwed. Like you will definitely 100% injure yourself. You have to have that joint stabilization. So let's dig into the bench press followed by a stability ball push-up example. So imagine performing these 2 exercises. So first you have the bench press. It's being performed in a stable and controlled manner. You're lying on a bench using a weight that feels safe for you. You're able to maintain your posture. You're able to focus on your breathing and proper exercise execution. Now, with no rest, you immediately move to the stability ball push-up. Unable to take rest is challenging dynamic for sure in its own way, but then adding on top of that the challenge to maintain postural control while you're engaging almost all of your body, mainly your core, to avoid toppling over on the stability ball as you perform a push-up. So on that stability ball, you really have to focus on proper breathing techniques. While your body is under more stress and more intensity, you have to focus on the ability to execute this exercise adequately as well. So now you go again, that bench press, you're in a controlled environment, to your body just undergoing more stress to execute that stability ball push-up. So you can kind of see the different dynamics there. It's really quite an awesome way to train. And I'll kind of dig into it, how you would transition from phase 1 to phase 2 and keep alternating that or those two phases in a little bit. But a lot of my clients really enjoy the supersets. They can really feel the muscle groups that you're trying to target. You can really feel how exquisite that is and how much strength and power you can create with a superset style of training. So we'll move into the goals and the strategies of phase 2, which is your strength level of training. So the goals of phase 2 is to improve stabilization endurance and increase prime mover strength. So again, just kind of tackling everything that we did in phase 1, increasing your stabilization, and now we're adding on to improve and increase the prime mover strength. Improve overall work capacity. You know, if you started in phase 2 and you were trying to focus on completing supersets, you would probably have a very hard time doing this because you wouldn't have the appropriate endurance or capacity to handle this type of training. So again, it's important to start in that phase 1 so you can complete and execute phase 2 properly. The next goal is to enhance joint stabilization. And I think this dynamic is overlooked quite a bit. It's incredible how important joint stabilization really is when it comes to exercise. And I'll take my own exercise phases for an example. During the summer, I usually train for triathlon that I complete in August. Then I go in a deloading phase, and then the rest of the winter into the spring, I'm really just kind of transitioning between phase 1 and 2. And I can tell you one thing, come April, May, when I start training for my triathlon, if I hadn't been really focused in phase 1 and 2 for my joint stabilization, I would hurt so bad on some of those first runs, those first bike rides, and even into those swim. So really focus on joint stabilization as you progress through all of your training phases. And then the next one that a lot of people really enjoy about this is you will increase your lean body mass. I mean, if you're targeting, let's take that bench press push-up example. If you have that one superset where you're focusing in on your chest, your upper body, that dynamic is really going to assist in increasing your lean muscle mass, not only in that group of muscles, but you kind of move around with your supersets and which muscles you're targeting. So you're getting your whole body in throughout these phase 2 workouts. It's just really targeted and really it's a good way of training. All right, so training strategies when it comes to phase 2. How should you complete these exercises when you're here? So you want moderate loads and high to moderate repetitions. So moderate loads, you want a weight that is challenging, but you can perform it in control. So let's say if you're doing moderate to high reps, so let's say you focus on 12 repetitions. By that 8th to 10th repetition, you should start to feel it. By the 12th repetition, you should be like, I really don't think I could do 13. Pretty challenging. So again, moderate loads where you're able to maintain that control, you're able to maintain proper body form, you're not pressing your hips forward, or you're not disengaging any area of your body. Your breathing is on cue. And again, you're focusing on that 8 to 12 reps. So because we're talking about supersets, your superset then would be one traditional strength exercise and one stabilization exercise per body part in the resistance training portion of the program. So I kind of just said that a few seconds ago. You go through each body part when you're doing that resistance portion in phase 2. And they say the resistance portion in phase 2 because you're probably going to want to add a little bit of cardio in there, maybe a little bit of circuit training just to keep that cardiovascular area of your fitness journey up. But during the resistance portion, or those supersets, that's when you want to focus on the traditional and then the stabilization. So it goes back again to the traditional strength exercise, which would be your bench press, and then one stabilization exercise, which would be that ball push-up. All right, so those were the goals and strategies of the strength level training. I really, really enjoy phase 2. Like it said, you just you focus on each part of your body, and it's really great to feel the challenge and the intensity of those supersets and how much you can improve and increase your strength level as you continue through that phase 2. All right, so there it is, phase 2. I hate to even say this because I don't want people to be like, oh, okay, but phase 2 is not like an absolute must phase that everyone must complete, but I highly, highly recommend and suggest transitioning into phase 2 after phase 1, as each exercise and superset can be modified to accommodate your physical level. Now, the reason why I even tap into saying this isn't an absolute must phase, because phase 1, the stabilization level, I mean, some of my clients have actually stayed there for most, if not all, of their training life. And that's okay, because there's a million different exercises out there. We can modify it in so many different ways to make sure that you still have that variety where you're able to progress. If you physically can't move into phase 2, then that's when you wouldn't visit phase 2. But most people can. Most people can perform supersets. It's hard at first, but you can progress into that superset phase. All right, and again, because I said this is an absolute must visit phase, don't let this be an excuse to avoid progressing your fitness journey. You should want to progress your fitness journey. You should want to see, you should want to feel what your body can accomplish, and to feel that various challenges and intensity levels. As you know, a lot of people kind of get stuck in that rut where they perform the same exercises over and over. They perform the same workouts over and over, and they're not seeing the results that they want. They're not challenging themselves, and and they don't understand why. So you could take a squat press and have 5 different variations to it. So you might have your meat and bones exercises, but you just keep adding variety and you keep progressing between these different phases. All right, so as I mentioned, phase 1 is great. It's an absolute must stage of training that everyone, from beginner to the elite athlete, must visit. So combining phase 1 and 2 together will lead you to massive gains and success. If all you did was visit phase 1 for 6 weeks, then phase 2 for 6 weeks, and continue to alternate between the two, you would be very successful towards reaching your fitness goals, and you would feel so much stronger and more confident. Phase 2 will focus on improving stabilization, your prime mover strength. It will increase your lean muscle mass. Okay, so don't skip over phase 2. Again, if you don't have I'm drawing a blank on what the word even is. It's not coordination. But if you just can't do it, your body can't physically perform phase 2, then that would be the only reason why you wouldn't visit it. All right, so in my next episode, I'll go over phase 3 through 5, which are actual optional phases for you depending on your goals and your mobility. If you have any questions at all, whether it's phase 1, phase 2, exercise ideas. You're more wondering on the strategies of this phase or both phases, what is a rep? What is a set? What is a recovery time? Like if you just need help on just uncovering all these dynamics and understanding them better, please reach out. Questions on your form, how to execute exercises properly so you can actually see those benefits, reach out. That is definitely why I and Ailini are here is to help you. We love questions. We thrive off of questions.
So I can ask
All
a
right.
question right now.
Oh, let's do it.
So you were talking about supersets and you mentioned circuits very, very quickly. Now I've seen some exercise programs where it's all done in a circuit. So it's strength training done completely in a circuit. Would this be a different phase, or what's the difference between a superset and a circuit, and why would you choose one over the other? Because for me, it just feels like I'll do a circuit if I don't feel like doing one exercise at a time. But that's not advice, okay, people? It's just that's just something that always goes through my mind when I think of circuits. So what's the difference? Why a superset? Why a circuit? Are they in the same phase or not?
Sure. Definitely, yes, they can be. So when I think of circuits, let's say you perform a superset, 2 exercises back to back, you repeat that set 3 different times, and then you have recovery, and then you move right back in. So circuits to me, you have less recovery time, whereas if you were to just perform the traditional superset, you have a minimum of 2 minutes of recovery in between because we're
Okay.
focusing on getting that ATP PC system back up to par. So does that answer your question? I mean, you can go into that circuit realm where it's more quick, you're working more on that muscle endurance, faster pace. It's a great way of training. But maybe when you're focusing in where you have those 2 minutes of rest, maybe you're able to perform those exercises more moderately, where you're able to execute them a little bit slower with heavier loads, that
Yeah.
type of thing. So 2 different variables, but yet I feel can be definitely in that same phase too.
Okay.
When I program for my clients, a lot of times, I'll have their warm up and then I'll have like a core or some kind of circuit training for them. And that for them is focusing in on like agility and balance. So they go through like a quick little circuit that focuses on those 2 dynamics. And then they hop down into like the superset resistance phase. But really, there's no right or wrong way. That's kind of like the gem about fitness. Is if you have a credential or accredited personal trainer and they know what they're doing, they can play around with those
Yeah.
programs to really give you those results that are going to progress you.
Yeah. Yes, that does answer it. Awesome.
Cool beans. All right. Yeah, that's phase 2 and it's a beautiful phase. So stay tuned. As we dig into phase 3, 4, and 5, that will be all in one episode. And then you can kind of decide, what goals do I have? Where do I want my fitness journey to go? How can I visualize what phases fit me best? And again, maybe it's just hopping back and forth with phase 1 and 2, and that's perfectly fine.
All right, awesome. And for next week, we are going to be talking about anxiety and eating. So this is a big one. There's a lot to unpack there, and we are excited to see you then.